together the meeting of the South Redford Board of Education at the Jan Jacobs Building on Monday, September 28th at 6:34 p.m. Will all please stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The next item on the agenda is roll call. Mr. Baker.
Patricia Thomas.
Present.
Thomas Gowdy. Here. Cheryl Fletcher.
Present.
Elizabeth Candace. Laurie Hicks.
Present.
Steve Baker present. Shirley Tolliver.
Present. The next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Is there any additions or changes to the agenda? There being none, the agenda will stand as written. And then recognition of people and programs. That'll be you. Mr. Valdez, before you get started, Mr. Valdez, before you get started, let me just clarify for everybody here in the audience. We do have two sections of audience comments. If you'd like to make a comment tonight regarding anything that is not on the agenda, that is done at our first audience comment session. If you're making questions or comments on the second of anything that's on the agenda, that comes in at our audience comments at the end. You are requested to fill out a comment card, which are on the table out there. So if anybody plans on making comments, they need to fill out one of those cards. We do have 3-minute limits to give any comments, with a maximum of 30 minutes for comments on either topic. So with that being said, Mr. Valdez, would you like to continue?
I would. Thank you, Madam President. I have some reports from schools. The first one is a report from Pierce Middle School. 8th grade PAI students had an amazing day at U of M. They visited the 3D lab last Friday. Their body images were turned into three-dimensional virtual versions of themselves. And they saw stop-motion video photography, 3D printing, 3D imaging, and experience a 3D virtual cave. Excuse me. We have a report from the Shear Early Childhood Center. They opened their doors to welcome 45 new and returning students and even more families to their barbecue meet and greet on September 11th. The program began with a welcome in the kindergarten readiness classroom where students and their parents and grandparents enjoyed a reading of The Kissing Hand. The character Chester from the story stopped by to give each child a kissing hand of their own, and then they created their own Chester to take home. The families then moved to the playground to enjoy fun time on the playground and delicious barbecue lunch of hot dogs and slushies. It was wonderful to see families and children connecting with each other and children enjoying quality time with their parents and grandparents. We have a report from Adams Elementary School. On Thursday, September 17th, Adams hosted its 4th annual Watch Dogs Pizza Night. Over 100 dads attended as they kicked off another year of dads supporting the learning at Adams. Dads from the entire community, that's all 4 of the elementaries, will take part in a football game at Thurston High School, October 8th at Thurston High School. And they're asking that everyone who would be interested would come out and watch them and support that event. Eagle Scout Drew Frenzel, son of 4th grade teacher Julie Marsh, brought together a team of scouts and parents to paint the playscape at Adams. Their work and dedication has helped to improve the facility and reminds us that it takes a community to run a school. Thank you to Drew. Adams will host their social studies writing night and open house Tuesday, September 29th from 5:30 to 7 p.m. They'll have an interpretive storyteller for students and families. Please join them. We have a report from Vandenberg Elementary School. On September 8th, PTO staff served ice cream and popsicles to over 300 people during their annual Vandenberg PTO ice cream social on the back courtyard of the school. Students and parents had an opportunity to meet staff and briefly discuss goals for the upcoming school year while enjoying a tasty summer delight. Parents and children were able to meet with representatives from both the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts of America. It was great to see so many familiar faces. I also received a letter from the Michigan High School Athletic Association, and this is in regards to our sportsmanship last year. We were congratulated by the MHSAA for having 0 concerns of sportsmanship during the entire school year. They received no negative officials reports. There were no unsportsmanlike calls against any of our students or athletes or coaches. So they sent us a letter congratulating us for that. As you know, we get audited on a lot of things. And so we were audited by the state to make sure that all of our teachers are certified for what they're teaching. And we pass with flying colors. The auditor comes in, spends an entire day just going randomly through files and looking to see if there are any discrepancies. And the gentleman who came to audit us was named Walter. And when he was leaving, he said, when MDE asked about districts that have great processes to meet these benchmarks, he will definitely recommend that people contact South Redford School District. So hats off to our HR department for making sure that we're passing our audits.
Right.
And that is all I have in terms of updates, Madam President.
I'd like to remind everybody to turn their cell phones off, first. Secondly, the upcoming MASB conference, Cheryl Flesher, Shirley Tolliver, and Elizabeth Haggis will be all attending. And Cheryl has asked to be the delegate at the MASB conference under the subject report. And I want to say, yes, please do so. And thank you for the offer. You have to pull teeth.
Yeah, but Shirley's going with me.
And I think that'll be a great learning.
I'm gonna
I'm
just
really
take
glad
her
to see.
wherever I go, Shirley's going, so be prepared, right?
Put your tennis shoes on.
That's because she does walk fast. Next item on our agenda is the Plus Delta.
Okay, this for the meeting on September 14th, 2015, there were no deltas.
Well, should we give us a hand too? Okay, next item on the agenda is comments from the audience, and this is topics not related to the agenda. Mr. Baker, are there any comment cards?
Madam President, we have none.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the financial audit report for the 14-15 school year. Mr. Goldens, I believe you're probably going to turn it over, but I'm going to turn it to you first.
Thank you, Madam President, and you are right. I'm going to turn it right over to our Finance Director, Nick Griffin.
Well, I'm going to turn it right over to our auditors.
Wow, are we that quick?
Matt Brand will tell the story a lot better than I could. We have Paul Brand, which obviously you know is one of the partners of Plant Moran, and then Kara Drainville, who's the lead auditor for us this year, and they're going to present the results of the audit. So.
Well, thank you very much. I guess we don't have anyone to pass to, so let me start talking. Well, good evening to everyone. As Nick mentioned, my name is Paul Bryan. I'm the audit partner, and this is Kara Drainville. What we're going to do is walk through the information related to the audit we just worked through for the year ending June 30, 2015. Just to start off for the current year, so the district had an unmodified opinion. For those of you in auditor terms, it's a clean audit opinion. It's the best opinion that we as auditors can give to a school district when we're providing that audit. One thing that will be new when the report is finalized and submitted to the state, all school districts will have an emphasis of matters paragraph in their financial statement this year. And what that relates to, as many of you are aware, there was a new accounting standard that we're required to implement in the current year. In short terms, we call it GASB 68. What that requirement is that all governmental entities are now required to put their portion of the unfunded pension liability that is owed to the various district employees on their books now. So for this district, basically that number is approximately $40 million. So if you think of the retirement fund for the entire state of Michigan,
all the dollars that are owed for that unfunded liability, your portion of it is approximately $40 million. So if you were to look at your financial statements on a government-wide basis, you'll see that number reported for the current year. But what I wanted to point out for individuals, that's on a government-wide. It doesn't affect your budgeting. It doesn't affect your financial statement information on a day-to-day basis. It's a government-wide, I'll call it an informational number at this point in time. Again, it's not something that the district did incorrectly or something that was overlooked or missed. In the big picture, what it represents is your portion that has always been out there, but now you're required to record it on your financial information. So as we go through, Kara's going to talk through the information that you received at a high level. And please, as always, as we walk through, please feel free to ask questions.
So we're going to take a look at the fund level statements. And we're mainly focused on the general fund, but you do have three other funds. The general fund is your day-to-day operations that are going through that fund. The debt service fund is your taxes, your millage related to the debt that would be used to pay current and future debt payments. And then your food service fund is your cafeteria fund. And your sinking fund is also a millage related to your taxes that is used for repairs on the schools.
Before you go any further, Kara, on this screen, just to give some background to everyone on the information, so you're looking at a bunch of numbers on a piece of paper. To give you a little flavor, so your general fund is basically your main fund within the district. If you're looking at your fund balance, the $3.5 million, so the board as a whole has a policy of maintaining a fund balance of between 10% and 15% of its total expenditures. That number is approximately 10.8%. So you're on the low end, but as we go through the presentation, basically we'll walk through with you what that meant to you for the current year. Looking at the debt service, there is an ending balance regarding that amount, but that, as Kara mentioned, is for future debt service payments. And in the current year, as we'll continue to explain to you, you paid off quite a bit of debt for the current year. So you have, in essence, put yourself in great position on a going forward basis. And then as well, we'll talk about the food service and the sinking fund as well. If many of the audience members may remember, the district and the community approved a $2 million sinking fund for the current year. Those are the dollars that were coming in for this year. And most of those, since this is as of June 30, those are the dollars that were spent over the current summer for various programs and projects that were going on. So as you'll see, those dollars are being spent appropriately. That's what we test for, to make sure what you approved were indeed spent appropriately.
And then just to touch base a little further on the general fund, the total assets are mainly made up of your state aid receivables that would be received in July and August, but for the previous school year. And then your liabilities would also be your general AP and then payroll related liabilities. So your salaries and wages for the teachers that get paid over the summer, but they would have ended working in June, so they still have to be accrued for. And then as Paul mentioned, your fund balance of this amount, not all of it is spendable money. There is about $2.3 million, that's what we call unassigned, but then there's also about $1.1 million that relates to committed fund balance for technology upgrades, Act 18 chargebacks, and major building repairs. And we'll talk a little bit more about the tech upgrades piece, which you guys did use a large chunk of that this year. And this is kind of the same thing, but this is the income statement side of things on the fund level. Again, we'll kind of go into a little more detail on the general fund side. In these upcoming slides, we'll talk about total revenue and what is exactly in there, and then also total expenditures. So for the debt service fund, that would be any type of revenue coming in would come directly from taxes and again be used to pay your future and current tax debt bills. The food service fund made money again this year and was able to transfer, you can see the total other financing sources and uses. They were able to transfer money back to the general fund to help the general fund pay for some indirect costs that can't be charged directly into the food service fund. And then the sinking fund, you do have a fund balance there, but that's just because of the timing of when projects actually occurred and when you received the money from your millage.
So, looking at this again, just to add some additional information, I'm gonna let the teacher in me come out.
Pointer if you want to use it.
Oh, no, you know me and pointers. So, looking at the information here, if everyone looks and sees the $553,000, the negative for the current year, basically what everyone says is, well, what does that mean? That means you used expenses greater than revenue of $553,000 in your general fund. But you also have to look at it, then what did that get me? So for the current year, and looking at it, although you used fund balance, which got you down on that low end that we just talked about at 10.8% overall, if you think about what happened this year, so this year, one of the things that happened was that your revenue for the athletic fund went down. So the board as a whole made a decision to change pay to play. They were able to give money back to the community in order to have more athletes available, to have better community involvement. So although this shows a negative number here, which most people take as a bad thing, the policy decisions that you made helped generate that number. The other thing would be you set aside money for future technology. You've always done that in your net asset position. So this year, approximately $650,000 you used on technology in the current year, which also drove that number. And what we'll show you is, looking at apples to apples, what if you didn't do those things? What would it do to your fund balance? On your debt service this year, it shows the ending debt fund balance, but again, you paid off approximately $6 million in debt this year. You refinanced some debt. You also got out of the school loan revolving fund, which is highly unusual. I've never seen anyone actually pay their debt off in the school district, but you were able to do that this year in excess of $2 million. Food service, you do very well in making money out of your food service program. The one thing I know I would ask as a parent is, if you're making money in your food service program, then why would you increase food rates for the students? The one thing parents have to be careful of, there is a minimum requirement that you have to increase food rates every year to keep up with inflation, to keep up with other things. But what this district does is the bare minimum, and is still able to control cost to be able to generate money that eventually is going to be able to go back into projects for your school fund. And then also, as Kara mentioned, the $341,000 is just a timing difference. So you approve the sinking fund for various security projects, things like that. Those dollars will be spent up, and so far the projects are in place, they just haven't been completed.
This next slide just gives us an idea of the general fund that we actually reported, which was a use of fund balance of $550,000. And then if we didn't actually use the tech upgrade, so the board had decided to use money out of the fund balance that they had set aside for $650,000 in order to upgrade some technology at the schools. So that, if you took that out and just operationally, how did the district do? They would have actually added to fund balance almost $100,000 this year. So just to give you an idea, like that was a conscious decision that this board and the district made to just keep up with technology in the schools. So without that, the operating, I guess you could say, did cause a positive change in fund balance.
So just think about it. On paper, you had a conscious loss that you decided to do. If you had not done that, think about what would happen in the district regarding technology. You wouldn't have a district with more up-to-date technology. You wouldn't have some of the other things that you've actually spent the money on. And then on the paper, everyone would be pretty happy to have an addition to fund balance of about $100,000, but look at what you would be doing without if you had done that. So again, although this is negative, this was a conscientious decision to do that through pay to play, through use of dollars for technology.
And this slide just shows the general fund revenue and kind of what makes up the general fund revenue. As you can see, most of the sources are state related, so that would be your state aid. So most of your district's funding does come from the state. And then there is a piece that comes from the federal government, so that would be your grant dollars. And then there's also property taxes, and then a small amount from local and like county, intergovernmental would be county sources as well. And as you can see, it appears that the revenue did increase from last year, and that's mainly due to what's called the MIPSERS 147C, where they give you money, but then they make you turn around and pay it right back for the retirement fund, that unfunded liability we're talking about that's on everyone's books now. So although it does appear that your funding sources went up for the state, you'll also see on the next slide that your revenue or your expenditures also increased in the same amount accordingly.
So if I had to do my math, that's about $1.6 million that the revenue went up. But as Kara mentioned, if you kind of look at the pie chart, you're pretty stagnant. So you know what you're going to get from the state. It's pretty made in stone unless there's a foundation increase. And then the allocation of those dollars, you can tell it doesn't really change. The question becomes, where are you putting it? But more importantly, how are you controlling the expenses on the other side?
And this is expenditures in more detail for the current year. Last year, the expenditures were about $31 million, so again, the increase is about even from what it was on the revenue side. And as you can see, the classroom is most of our expenditures, which one would expect since we're in the business of teaching, so it's teachers' salaries, wages, fringes, benefits. And then there's also support services, and that's kind of a large amount, but there's a lot of things in it. So this is further breaking it down. The second graph is further breaking down the support services, like what type of support services are we talking about here. And as you can see, the main things are pupil-related, transportation, operations and maintenance, the general administration, so principals are in here, any board-related costs are in here, any busing, any operations and maintenance are all included in the support services. And then there's a small amount for community services and athletics, and any capital outlay, which is capital expenditures that would be capitalized on the district's books. This is a quick snapshot of the budget to actual. So you originally budgeted to use about $611,000 of fund balance. And then in your final budget, it was about $607,000. And then you actually came in at about $550,000. So overall, your budget to actual was actually $50,000 better than you had anticipated. And that, again, some of this increase is related to the capital expenditures that we were talking about, the technology upgrades, which would be the difference between the original budget and the final budget. The original budget actually didn't even have those included. So you can see the district, what they originally thought they were going to spend would have been much more if the technology upgrades were made and they used the budget of the $611,000.
So there should be, and I want to make sure I give an applause to the administration as well as the board, so that the public is aware, if this was your own household, looking at this budget, the original budget that you would have set, based on your check coming in the house, you would have thought you would have been overspent by $611,000. Coming in on your final and then your actual, you actually, look how close you are on your budget. You're $53,000. $53,000 on a $32 million school district off of where you thought you would be. That's pretty good budgeting. And again, remember, we just talked about the conscientious effort to make sure that basically you got the bang for your buck of what generated this number.
And as Paul had mentioned earlier, the district's sitting at about 10.8%, which is the percentage of fund balance that you have compared to your general fund expenditures. And for 2014, most districts were at about 9%. So even in the current year, you still have 10.8, which is better than the average district.
So if I'm looking at this, again, I'm asking myself, the board has a policy between 10 and, to maintain ourselves between 10 and 15%. You get nervous when you're on the end part of that range at 10.8%. But again, the question should be the status of the district, how well are we educating our students, what do we have available, and what are we offering to the community in order to be able to draw students here. So again, even though you're on the low end of that, you spent your dollars appropriately to be able to put out a good product in order to do that. With this, what we wanted to do is leave you basically with some highlights for the current year. We talked about a use of fund balance of approximately $553,000. Here's some of the highlights of the year that actually happened. So the district refunded its bond by issuing a new bond for $32 million. What it was able to do was wipe out the 2004 and 2005 bond issues. So you refinanced debt basically. But the big picture is, well, what did that save us? In debt payments, it saved you $4.6 million for the current, over that time period that your debt was outstanding. In conjunction with that, by refinancing, you were in the school loan revolving fund, and what that allowed you to do is pay off that in debt, principal and interest in its entirety of $2.1 million. A portion of the fund balance was used to upgrade your technology. It was approximately $653,000. And I thought this was a huge one right here because this gives the board as well as the school district an opportunity to tell the community we're hearing your concerns and we're putting money where our mouth is in making decisions to put money back in the community by adjusting your pay to play. That is a hard subject to discuss. It is a revenue generator for the district. But basically, again, what you did was put it back to the community and said, we're willing to let the general fund absorb some of those costs to make it a better program for all students to be able to participate. And then your cafeteria fund for this year continues to make money. The ending balance for that is approximately $411,000. So going forward, projects that you would like to implement, and I know the superintendent might have some going forward, there are dollars there to be able to do that without taxing your general fund in the excess of doing that. So between the dollars here for projects, the community approved sinking fund of 2 mils, there's dollars to be able to do things that you want to do going forward. And one of the hard things to do are to make tough decisions in a short period of time. What you've done here is you've made some tough decisions. I've been in some of these board meetings. They've been tough decisions. But what you have not done is handcuff the future board members, administration, and the community with your decision making, because you've wiped out a lot of debt and you've made some great decisions in doing it. Any other questions?
In a different context, the CPA made a presentation to us, not anywhere in this district, but it was at work. And at the end of it, during the question and answer, he said, you know what, this is something you should ask me. What is something that we should ask you tonight that is really kind of maybe heavy on your heart, or you're all happy and good, or what?
It's heavy on my heart as an auditor?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not talking global warming here.
No, one thing you should ask, and hopefully it came through, was the fact that even though you have used your fund balance in the current year, and I continue to harp on that, the decisions behind that, in other words, what did we get for our money this year? This is the decision. We've had to make these decisions. What did we get in return for doing that? And hopefully that last slide was able to show you, here's the things you got for your money. Here's the things we were able to do for the district based upon the decisions. Because unfortunately, a lot of times as board members, you make decisions, but you don't necessarily get to see the positive impact of the big decisions versus, micro decisions of making different things. So hopefully that's what my question would be. What did I get for my money this year?
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.